Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Autonify podcast. I've got Alex with me today. Alex, say hello.
Hello, Alex.
Thanks. And then Gareth, do you want to say hello as well?
Hello, Alex.
Hi, Alex. Hi, Gareth.
Hi, James.
So look, we've decided to do these podcasts a little bit more regularly, right? So we've decided we're going to do them weekly, talk a little bit about what we've been up to during the week, some of our thoughts, some of the things that have got us excited about. So Alex, this was kind of your baby, I suppose, right? You got excited by this. So I'm going to pick on you first. Why don't you kick off the conversation?
Well, there's sort of two things I was thinking about when we were setting up. I think one, I am continually reminded me of the highs and lows of being a startup, right? And this week was a great example just from stuff we're doing and our day to day is spectacular and sort of pinch yourself. And then at some moments you're kind of like, I must be out of my mind, And I think we had both of those. I think, and we had a lot of meetings this week. We had a lot of meetings. We spoke to a lot of people, and it ranged from, I think one meeting we were told that, we're 2 years ahead of where we are, and that was a product company. And, you guys are amazing. What you're doing is amazing. To the kind of the traditional kick the tires, hey, sounds nice, but, no commitment, no actions, no nothing. And the emotions that come out of those two things are quite interesting. But I think reflecting on it on a Friday, you can't beat yourself up too much, and you've got to enjoy the positivity a little bit. And I think that was quite cool. I don't know how you guys felt, because we were all in different meetings as well, which was quite interesting. So we were spread across all sorts of different things. So I don't know how you felt about that this week.
Yeah, I mean, from my point of view, I only focus on the positives because otherwise, so I just try and take positives out of any conversation, even if, the outcome isn't exactly what we wanted. There's always stuff we can learn, right? There's always things we can consider for the next meeting, or, angles we need to pivot into potentially for certain customers or certain prospects.
Well, in fairness, you had possibly the best meetings, because I had to roll out GIFs and all sorts when you updated us. You had a week.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
James, what's your coping mechanism for these ups and downs?
Yeah, absolutely. Just power through, keep going, no looking back, just always forward.
Yeah. I particularly like building, like when even though you're going through all these emotions, like just for me as an engineer, it's nice to just be able to sit down and right, I'm going to forget about that now and just going to build something, and just going to add to the platform and, see what cool stuff I can come up with. So that's something for me.
It's so funny, because if you had asked me that about 6 months ago, I think I would have said that coding was just becoming boring and it was just becoming so cumbersome. Maybe more, maybe 9 months ago. But it's like whenever you were coding, there was so much boilerplate and just so much you're in the weeds, just grinding away every day, trying to achieve something by the end of the week to show, right? And I feel like it's completely reversed for me now. I was telling my wife about this yesterday. It's like it almost just feels like a video game when you're coding now, because of all these new tools that are out there. And it's so rewarding. You're there typing into some agent or something, go away and build me this. And then 2 minutes later, you've got a result back. And it's almost like this massive dopamine hit of just wow, I want to do that again. What's the next thing I can do? And yeah, I agree with you, Gareth. It's so much fun to be building and to be in this tech space at the moment. I think it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
That really resonates with me, because when I was building the last startup, it was pre AI really. It was just starting to come through. I used to take, when I finished a big feature, I would get this massive elated feeling. But now it's become so much easier to get to the point where I would get that elated feeling. Yeah, so I think I resonate with that sort of dopamine hit. It just feels it does feel rewarding. And also it feels like I'm cheating half the time. It's like I should not be able to move this fast.
There was a fantastic article. We talked about this a little bit, and I know we want to talk also about our changing of tooling, because that actually was significant this week as well. You guys changed tooling a bit. But there was an article about there's a company that is literally looking at doing a 1-to-1 ratio between product managers and engineers, because the product manager has become the bottleneck. The code's so quick and iterative. The decision making around the product is slowing everything down now. which is
I
fascinating.
could see that. I can absolutely see that.
Testing as well. I think testing has just become not like testing the code to a certain extent, but actually testing from the functional point of view of I probably spend more time now in the application I'm building testing the functionality than I spend actually building it, which is such a weird way around, right? And then you're just refining it. I think the other interesting thing for me at the moment is actually the cost of these things. I moved away from Cursor this week because it just started to get ludicrous, the bill. They changed all their pricing and ended up changing to Claude Code in the end. And it's like, when these things get expensive, if they do, it's going to be crazy, right? Because are you just going to move to this model where you're just paying almost the equivalent of a full-time employee, but maybe a little bit less in terms of engineering? But I think that's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out. Because everyone keeps saying it's going to be a race to the bottom, right? But I think often with these things, it's a race to the bottom and then it's like a climb to the top. And I feel like these companies now, like Cursor, OpenAI, it's getting more and more expensive. It's not getting cheaper, right? Which is kind of interesting.
But what was fascinating for me on that, sorry, Gareth, what was fascinating for me on that is that you just did it overnight. Like there's no switching cost per se. Like you imagine saying that about your CRM or any embedded system. You'd be like, oh God, I worked in a company where the Dynamics project took 4 years to get over, and we're still going. That to me is amazing in itself.
I mean, it is amazing because literally I span up Claude Code and you can go in there. There's a command already preset and it's like /init. And what that does is it basically goes off and sends the agent off to go and document your code base in what Claude expects it to be in the format that can help it and put all these little bits across it. But it's like, that's amazing, isn't it? But you're right, Alex, the migration cost it's minimal, right? It's self-service and it's the cost of running the agent, which is interesting.
Yeah, my bill for Cursor is on the way up. So I will also be trying out James's approach next month, I think, because it does sound really good. We had a bit of an offline conversation about some of the features I like about Cursor, and then a quick Google, I was like, oh no, all the features are, and there's feature parity across both platforms. So I'm like, well, now I've got no argument. It's just a comfortable UI. I've just got comfortable with the environment, and I'm just scared to move on, I think. So I've really got no excuse. I just have to bite the bullet and try it out, I think.
I know, but even then, if you go back 3 months, so maybe 4 months ago, I think it was the first time I used Cursor, and Gareth, you were using it before me, but in that primitive state, you had to open up the files you wanted to edit. You would drag and drop them into the window, and then you would say what changes you wanted to make to those files. And then I think about 6 weeks ago or something, Cursor introduced it where you didn't have to do that anymore. It would go away and find the files. And then about 2 or 3 weeks ago, they introduced it where you could just keep stacking different items on top of each other like a queue of work that Cursor would just keep picking up and going. And you look at Claude Code now and it's literally just fully agent based. So I found this library which made me laugh yesterday, which was called an integrated vibe environment, and it's basically a development environment for vibe coding. So you can connect into there. Comes over a little portal and you can basically send off agents to go and do loads of different tasks over your code base. So if you've got like a whole backlog of features, you can literally go and spin up 30 agents or like a little team to go and develop those 30 things, and then it comes back, it's branched them all so you can see the changes, you can review them, you can tweak it, you can give them some feedback to go and do the next thing, right? But it's like, oh my God, if you think about the evolution over the past 3 or 4 months, it's crazy. Like it's almost impossible to keep up. I think one of the things I'm seeing a lot in these conversations now, and we spoke about it earlier, Gareth, is there's almost this divide in IT now. There's such a big divide between the people who are using the tools and the people who aren't. And the pace you can move at if you have this tooling is incredible. And if you don't have it, you're not using it. It's just creating such a big gap at the moment, right? It's a weird time, I guess.
I'd add a layer to that, and we actually have seen it in a couple of meetings this week. The senior management that run these teams also need to understand how the teams can use the tools. Because we've bumped into a couple of places where you're like, and I've been going through that this week as well, thinking about how we use these tools for business operations and things like that. It's like you just need to change your mindset, and you don't need to know everything, but you need to be aware that the these things are out there and your teams may want to use them. And you sort of have to shift your expectations around, I guess, project delivery a little bit as well. That's been really interesting. I think management's going to really struggle with this, because I can sort of put myself back in corporate world. Most the workflows and the processes and how you run the business doesn't almost support it. Like sprints don't even really support a lot of this kind of the way that we're thinking about it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's a good question. How do you guys think this sort of new approach? We've already seen, Alex, you said that a company was doing one-to-one program managers or project managers to engineers. How do we see that evolving over time? If what James is saying with this vibe coping tool, you can effectively get 30x, from one developer, how do product keep up with that? Or how does the rest of the business keep up with that?
We talked this about when we were talking about like futures and strategic planning and how the org might look in the future. Like one of the things we did explore is like you've kind of got to collapse the steps between engineering and delivery, and product manager is the traditional sense, I don't think particularly exists anymore. And equally, we talked a lot about how salespeople don't exist in the same, or sales channels don't exist in the same way. I think you end up with like that middle section just collapsing, and you have hybrid roles that are able to kind of quantify the value of the product, be able to define the product and other things coming together with things like business development, and then being able to quickly push that through to engineers. And I think also, and this is what I was trying to do this week with the tooling, was I need to use the tools to define market research and demand as well. Like as quickly as you're building it, I need to be able to go out there. And I had that project this week of like, can I use Claude to go through unstructured, discuss to find people that have these use cases? And it worked quite well. Like you were able to like prioritize it. And so we have to build those things as well.
Do you think there'll be a shift into more like high performing teams that can self-organize everything and, run the whole thing themselves as opposed to having the typical structure?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm in so many different minds at the moment, because part of me thinks if the technology keeps evolving as it has, and in 3 months' time or 6 months' time, it's doubled in its ability, which it could happen, right? Like it surprised me every time something new has been released. Then I think you could almost end up in the state where the role of the developer it's non-existent, right? Like why do you need that anymore? And I think at the moment there is, when I spoke about it earlier, talking about this divide, this disparity, I think what I meant was if you look at these tools in the hands of the wrong people at the moment, like less experienced developers, junior developers, it's incredibly dangerous, because it's very easy to get yourself in a state where you have code that is not secure. You've got code which is based upon lots and lots of assumptions that the AI has come up with. Whereas if you look at the way we're using these tools, we've got the experience that when the code comes back, we can be like, okay, that's going to cause a massive database bottleneck. That's going to create security vulnerabilities because the middle layer isn't got authentication over it, blah, 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 right? So it's like, you then go back and you tell the AI, okay, actually, I want you to do this with the security now, implement this particular standard, etc. And I think that's created this divide now. But honestly, in 3 months' time, if the agents can do that themselves, or it's built into the prompts, or the LLMs have got so advanced that you don't need that, then it might go the other way, Alex, where actually you don't need developers and you just have product managers, because you can have a product manager there leading a virtual engineering team, right? And I think that's really scary. You just don't know which direction it's going in, and that's crazy. Right.
I mean, it's a super interesting thought, but I do think, and I did a little LinkedIn post, social cross-pollination for the, you have to have it's kind of what you described. I think you have to have the person that understands the thing. Like a product manager, doesn't understand what engineering at the deepest level is doing and what could cause a database bottleneck. So you're relying with someone with no knowledge. But what changes is the actual physical doing maybe goes away, but the human in the loop and one thing I was thinking a lot about this week was the creativity, the problem-solving element becomes more important. So I think you have a rise of the engineer that's really good at lateral thinking and creativity and problem solving, and maybe a reduction of the people that are just coding to spec. Like they're just taking the spec and they're just building and building and building. Maybe that's the way it starts to shift. But then you start to worry, then where do people learn? Like, how do you learn the basics? Because that's how, way back when, my first ever job was like programming COBOL 85 for mainframes in financial services. And you were taken on as a grad and you were given free, to a willing client to go and be, do things wrong for a period of months until you kind of learn. And how's that going to happen anymore?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because they won't understand they won't understand what they're doing wrong. As James said, there's this gap, and it needs to be addressed at some stages. Otherwise, either there's no need for developers at all, which would really make me sad.
Yeah.
Or we need to address that and make sure that we have the right education paths in place to get people up to speed. Also, we may see that AI could be applied to education, so that actually education becomes quicker and more targeted towards practices.
I think it's interesting as well, because obviously I feel like we're in this tech bubble at the moment, the three of us, because we just love it and live it, right? Like, we're all over it, every new release. But it's interesting also hearing you speak, Alex, about kind of the marketing ops and the sales ops and everything, and where that is at from an AI perspective. I mean, you mentioned you had to go at building your own, I guess, effective agent this week, right? I mean, where do you see these other kind of disciplines on the scale of AI and adoption at the moment?
Well, the unlock for me is I used to spend so much time trawling data, but I still had to have the human reasoning and the decision making on top of it. So, and my theory with market data was always like, I want it from every place. I want, industry reports, I want sales channels telling me, and I want, really, really like down level listening on phone calls type data. I want it all, because then you can kind of parse it. And then the skill is interpreting it. And I think that's fundamentally human, like actually pulling in the data. But getting all the stuff was insanely difficult. And in fact, like even within an organization, you couldn't find it. That's a little bit the unlock for me this week, is like I can go and get my industry data. And actually I was really excited about going to Reddit and having the agent go over Reddit and read everything and go, what are the top 3 things that people are worrying about in this subject? And it just simply ranking them. And that's a really, really useful input that would have been really, really hard for me to get. So I feel like I've got more insights, and that drives better decision making from my perspective. The thing I've been reading about, and this is for us a little bit in the future, because we're not particularly doing direct outbound enough at the moment, because we've got enough inbound, which is really nice, is some of these case studies around outbound driven SDRs using, basically AI agent SDRs, and some of the performance of that, and, digital chat and things like that. And actually, when you look at some of the numbers, it's really good. The one case study I read, though, about outbound was fascinating, is that you create an expectation with the customer for immediacy. So as soon as you get a positive hit, it's like the scoring gets good or the signals are really good and the kind of the SDR agent has run their call, you've got to pick that up straight away, because otherwise the customer or prospects actually gets quite despondent, because they've had this sort of great experience up until the handover. So the handover becomes even more, it was always important, but really, really important that you get that right. And this one company that wrote the case study were like, they've literally gone back to almost like old school pages on their iPhones that alert them as soon as the SDR hands them a well-signaled lead to pick it up at any time of the day or night, which was a fascinating kind of unexpected result of the success they'd had. Yeah.
Interesting. So what are we talking? Yeah, go on, you go.
Should we talk about OpenAI, or
Go on. This
leave
is
it for another day?
Topic at the moment, isn't it?
I think it's amazing that they've moved into consultancy.
Right.
I think it's a real power play. I mean, they are only targeting sort of £10 million or dollar minimum engagement. They are only targeting the real big boys, but it's sort of giving signals to the market about where companies are going, because we've seen it. People want AI. They need AI. They know they need it. They really want it, but they don't know how to get it. And so we're not. It's like testing our hypothesis. But one of the biggest players in the world has tested it for us, and they've come out and said, consultancy is a viable angle. We're going to do it. So what are your guys' thoughts on that?
I think they have to do it. Honestly, I mean, most of the money will end up coming from these enterprises, especially if they reallocate their capital away from employees and they effectively move that spend to AI, because they genuinely have this hypothesis that AI can deliver better results, more efficiency, and it's running 24/7. It kind of makes sense, right? Why there's a huge amount of spend that could be transitioned off, right? And I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Gareth. Like every executive, every VP I've spoken to, there's a big gap, right? There's this chasm at the moment in terms of being able to deliver on the promise of AI, and I think that OpenAI have to go out and do that. I just don't see how they unlock this enterprise market without it, to be honest. Alex, what do you think?
I think I agree with you. So sort of we've seen the demand on the ground, right? Because we, as you say, we talk to companies that go, as you said, Gareth, like I want to do it. I think what's fascinating. My initial reaction was, come on, this is a big ticket item for big enterprises to spend a lot of money between each other again. Like, how many times have we seen this? Like, how many waves? Digital transformation, digital engagement. Like, it always comes with a multi-million-dollar price tag that's eked out by only a few for the few. And I was like, this feels like it's an incredibly powerful technology used in a kind of in the wrong way, because surely the whole point of this is a bit of democratization. And we talked about it a lot, is like, certainly when I've done sort of the TAM analysis, the addressable market analysis of ours one, is like all the category that we very loosely sit in has been used up, is well penetrated in the very large enterprises, because nobody down market has had the money or the time or the skills to afford to be able to do it. So they're essentially missing out on the value and the ROI. Surely the point of AI is that you get these things like that. If it isn't for that, then what's the point? Like, so I was a bit like, but maybe that's the first and it will start coming down the market. But if it just sits again to the privileged large, I was a bit like, well, we've seen this before. And actually it sort of gave me another, because I've got a bug in my ear about this anyway. It's like, that feels like even more our mission is to bring some of this stuff down market in a much more accessible way. Like, it just felt that was a good data point that backed that up once again, I think.
Yeah, one of my questions to you guys was going to be, what do we think the impact will be on the mid-market for this?
Interesting.
It's a good question. I fully agree with you, Alex. I think you're spot on there. But I also think there's almost this weird... It really depends what happens, right? Like, I'm really worried about LLM pricing at the moment. I don't know why. Like, I've just woken up today and it's just big on my mind, I guess, this week. But to me, if the LLMs become... If it does come down to two players, right? OpenAI, Anthropic, and those are the two players with the best LLM models, and they can demand whatever pricing they want, then yeah, I mean, everyone is going to be outpriced. We're going to be outpriced from using LLMs. The mid-market's going to be outpriced. It's only going to be the big enterprises who can take it, right? And I think the piece that would deviate from that is basically the open source models. There has to be these open source models that are free, affordable, cheap. Otherwise, it will end up exactly what you're describing, Alex. But I think if you end up in this state where actually, okay, the models that have big funding, big investment like OpenAI, Anthropic, they're only marginally ahead, but that margin is important to big enterprises because 1% of a billion is a lot of money, but actually 1% of 100,000, who cares? You know what I mean? Like, it's not a huge amount, right? So in that case, you do end up with this democratized layer where it's all fair and it's all good, right? And everyone's making their piece and everyone's happy. But I think that really worries me at the moment, because otherwise you will end up with this reverse play. And it's fine now because it's very cheap, it's affordable. There's no way $20 of Claude or $20 of OpenAI is actually $20 cost to them. I'm sure it costs them a hell of a lot more to run those subscriptions, right? And they're making a loss on that at the moment. Does that make sense?
It does.
A bit of a brain sprawl is just...
But then I'm like, no, I think it does. But then, the new version of Grok has been getting... fairly interesting reviews, and we've got all the stuff from China that I think is going to start. So I hope. I mean, this is just me being positive. Like, I hope there's some disruption because wherever you see friction, like price control, particularly in something like this, I think that friction invites other ways. And I think what the really interesting thing about the mid-market is, and we're experiencing this in some meetings, is they're the ones that can do the most with the tools. So even if the tool is 5% less good, they may do things that are 10% better than the really large enterprise, because the large enterprise has got all sorts of friction in their systems and inertia and all other things that we've all experienced with those organizations. So I do think, I mean, that's a really interesting thought. We always say it's right. It's going to be who uses the tools better, but it's probably who's going to make the most out of every bit of the tool that they use, whether it's the best one or not the best one, that's going to really drive the impact.
That's true. I think there's also a really interesting position here that, and we were talking about this the other day, Alex, if coding does keep going in this direction where it just becomes easier, faster, you can do more, the 1000x you spoke about there, Gareth, then what happens to this whole, old school enterprise software sales, software motion, right? Where you've got software that is essentially, the minimum ticket price is 300 or 400K, right? Everyone's outpriced from that, but actually, they were outpriced from that because of the manpower it took to create that software, right? And everything from it. And now you've got this democratization of software development, I guess, or, application building, whatever you want to call it. Does that then mean that enterprise software disappears because anyone could come around, like some kids in their bedroom could turn up and create the same software as a big enterprise, right? And what they're doing.
And I think we've already seen examples, Canva, who actually ironically have now started an enterprise software sales team. So that's an irony. But they were doing quite well not having one, and departments within large organizations buying the tool. Right? There are these examples. And maybe enterprise sales, as in, one-to-one sales teams, people going in, is required from a contract management and license management perspective because large organizations need that. But for other reasons, I think there are two things that are happening. I think there's going to be a rise of point solutions because they're easy to build, and departments can get very, very capable, solid point solutions to solve their departmental problems. Then the cost of goods just keeps going up, and you can't keep going to your customers and asking for 20%, 30%, 40% more because your cost of goods went up. There's got to be a shift within that cost-based model.
Yeah, I completely agree. Look, guys, we're up against time here. Gareth's getting married this weekend, so I think he's got to start his celebrations. Yeah, congratulations, Gareth. Thanks so much, guys. Really interesting. Looking forward to doing this again next week.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.